One day, our family started practicing taekwondo, and it turned out to be a special blessing for us. Taekwondo family, return to happiness.
옛날에는 택시부터 시작해가지고 버스, 덤프트럭, 낮과 밤이 없이 몸이 부서지도록 일을 했죠. 그러다 보니까 몸이 많이 망가졌어요. 허리 협착증도 생겼고 무릎도 아프고. 이제는 내 삶이 다 됐는갑다 생각을 하고 사는 것도 싫고 완전 좌절을 했죠.
지팡이를 짚고 다니실 만큼 근력이 약해지셔가지고 너무 힘들었는데 우연찮게 실버 태권도라는 거를 알게 되셨어요.
다리도 안 올라갔거든요, 솔직히. 근데 64세부터 태권도를 해서 7년째 하고 있습니다.
인상도 너무 밝아지셨고 빨리 가고 싶다고 하시고 도복을 보면서 흐뭇해 하시더라고요. 그때부터 어머니의 삶이 다시 시작이 된 것 같고 지팡이를 안 짚기 시작하셨어요. 그게 진짜 놀라운 변화인 것 같습니다.
어르신들이 운동을 통해서 노년을 건강한 생활을 할 수 있게끔 도와주는 게 바로 저는 태권도라고 생각이 듭니다.
Not only did Mother experience this change, but her fellow teammates also felt reborn due to the dramatic change in their lives.
너무 좋아요. 온 세상을 다 얻은 것 같죠. 제가 태권도 전도사가 된 것 같아요.
열정이 높으신 분이죠. 그 가족 전체가 태권도 가족입니다. 아주 화목하고 건강이 넘치는 대한민국의 대표적인 태권도 가족이 아닌가 싶습니다.
We're a family that loves practicing taekwondo, so we've embarked on a new challenge.
사실 저희 가족들이 아픔이 정말 많습니다. 제가 아침에 일어났는데 반신이 마비가 왔었고 저희 아이는 태어나자마자 인공 심박기를 달았었고 정상으로도 살기 힘들다는 진단을 받았었지만 이 아이를 보면서 기적이라는 것을 알게 됐거든요. 그래서 태권도는 행복 그 자체입니다.
태권도를 해서 강해지니까 더 자신감이 올라가고 행복해요.
I believe taekwondo is a blessing from heaven. It has made us hopeful for the future. Every day, we're excited to see what's in store for us tomorrow. Practice it with your family. Taekwondo brings happiness.
Tensions have been building throughout the day at and around the presidential residence in Yongsan, with speculation that authorities are proceeding with a warrant to detain President Yoon Suk-yeol as early as today. Yoon's legal team protests the execution of the warrant. Police executed a search and seizure warrant this morning as part of their official investigation into Sunday's tragic plane crash at Busan International Airport. All of the 179 victims have now been identified. The government has unveiled its economic policy direction for 2025, forecasting growth of 1.8% this year amid mounting risks at home and abroad. It's 8 p.m. in Seoul, January 2nd, 2025. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us for the first episode of Newscenter in 2025. I'm Yoon Jung-min. In the new year, we hope to deliver more inspiring stories and good news. Our top story this evening begins with an unprecedented political event happening here. The mood has been tense throughout the day, with speculation that the authorities could execute an arrest warrant against President Yoon Suk-yeol as early as today over his brief martial law imposition about a month ago. For the latest developments, we have our Kim Jong-sil live on the line. Jong-sil, did the authorities proceed with the warrant?
Tong-mi, they have not. The warrant has not been executed yet. It has been 3 days since the Seoul Western District Court issued the arrest warrant, but the Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials, or CIO, has not attempted to enforce it. Reports suggest the CIO is carefully reviewing the situation and timing, but critics argue this delay risks wasting the warrant's validity, which expires on January 6th. And this evening, President Yoon's legal team filed a formal objection with the Seoul Western District Court, challenging both the arrest and the search warrants. At the center of the legal team's objection is the court's unprecedented exclusion of Articles 110 and 111 of the Criminal Procedure Act in the search warrant, provisions typically safeguarding sensitive military or official secrets. While this exclusion has prompted debate over its legal validity, critics argue it has also allowed Yoon's team to divert attention from the central issue of accountability. Despite these objections, experts assert the arrest warrant is valid and enforceable. Professor Chang Young-soo of Korea University, a constitutional law expert, said the warrant was legitimately issued due to the president's repeated refusal to cooperate.
What happens if the president continues to fight the arrest warrant?
Experts note that enforcing the arrest warrant is not impossible, as its validity remains intact. They emphasize that the arrest warrant alone permits President Yoon's detention, including entering his premises to take him into custody, regardless of the issues tied to the separate search warrant. However, enforcement remains a challenge.
Enforcement is not impossible, and the warrant's validity cannot be entirely dismissed. The arrest warrant itself is legitimate, but potential physical clashes with supporters are another issue.
Now, questions remain about the delay in the arrest of President Yoon, despite the CIO completing its preparations legitimately. Hardline supporters gathered near Yoon's Hannam-dong residence, and coordination issues with police have stalled progress. Critics argue the delay fuels claims of preferential treatment and undermines trust in the justice system. With time running out before the January 6th deadline, the CIO is facing mounting pressure to act decisively. That's all I have for this hour. Back to you, Jung-min.
Thank you, Jong-sil, for the updates. And with the news of the arrest warrant possibly being executed today, this has led to rising tensions near the presidential residence, where rallies have been taking place. We now go live to our reporter Lee Eun-hee, who is there standing by for us. Eun-hee, what's the situation like there?
Good evening, Jung-min. I'm out here near the presidential residence in Hannam-dong Yongsan-gu District, Central Seoul. Even late into the evening, citizen rallies continue, and the situation appears to be growing more intense. Behind me, as you can see, supporters of President Yoon are giving speeches, chanting out slogans, and singing together. They're calling his name, opposing his impeachment, claiming that the declaration of martial law was legal, and demanding the arrest of the main opposition party leader. Reportedly, things gotta be heated here. Some of Yoon's supporters had to be taken to the hospital due to health issues. Also earlier at around 4:30 p.m., the police forcibly dispersed over 30 protesters who have broken through barricades and staged a sit-in at the front gate of the presidential residence, which had been going around since noon. They were trying to block vehicles from entering the presidential residence and carrying out the arrest. In response, the police issued 5 warnings before forcibly dragging them out and grabbing them by their arms and legs due to strong resistance. During this process, 2 individuals were taken into custody. Meanwhile, those opposing the president are also holding rallies, and barricades have been set up to prevent clashes between the 2 opposing groups. Those calling for the president's impeachment are criticizing him, stating that he has shown no remorse for his actions and are demanding his arrest. Tension here at the scene is rising as speculation intensifies that any time now, the execution of the arrest warrant for President Yoon Suk-yeol could proceed.
What is the current police presence like?
Well, I've already seen several heated exchanges between the protesters and police officers, mostly when the police officers were trying to calm them down due to safety reasons. The police have been deployed to the streets and alleys near the presidential residence, and the area in front of the front gate of the main gate is blocked off, restricting civilian access. The entrance to the residence is blocked, and nearby many riot-controlled buses and police vehicles are parked, further strengthening the security presence. So far, there has been no significant movement from the investigators regarding the execution of the warrant for President Yoon Suk-yeol and his arrest. If this changes, additional police forces are expected to prevent any further escalation.
That was our Yoon Hee live from the presidential residence in central Seoul. The rival parties are clashing over the possible execution of the arrest warrant for President Yoon. The ruling People Power Party on Thursday criticized the court and the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials for issuing and planning to execute the warrant, calling it illegal and politically motivated. The party demanded the court and the CIO stop aligning with, quote, the Democratic Party's manipulation of public opinion. Meanwhile, opposition parties, including the DP, urged CIO investigators to immediately execute the warrant. They called on the Presidential Security Service to cooperate and warned of strong action, including the filing of insurrection charges, if the warrant is not properly respected and allowed to be enforced. The Constitutional Court is holding its second pre-trial hearing tomorrow, Friday, and this upcoming event will take place in the presence of 8 justices, given the recent filling of the 2 of the 3 vacancies. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial proceedings will continue with the second preparation hearing taking place this Friday. Judges will once again attempt to lay out the main grounds for his impeachment and a working list of evidence and witnesses each side would like to present throughout the trial. At the first hearing last Friday, the National Assembly's impeachment panel set out 4 to 5 grounds in their move to remove Yoon from office. It applied for 15 witnesses, including key figures under investigation suspected of being involved in the martial law order, such as former Defense Minister Kim Yong-han. Yoon's team, however, had not submitted any materials. But his lawyers seemed to contest the grounds for impeachment, saying they were based on media reports, as well as the court's method of delivering official papers to notify Yoon of the trial. The president had refused to accept the delivery at his residence and office in central Seoul. Thus, amid concerns that Yoon's legal team will employ delaying tactics to prolong the trial, it remains to be seen how cooperative the team will be in the preparatory hearing.
Still, Yoon's trial is expected to pick up pace as the Constitutional Court now has 8 justices, one short of a full panel, but still the same number as when former President Park Geun-hye was impeached in 2017.
The initial panel would have needed to vote unanimously for impeachment, as at least 6 justices need to uphold the ruling under the 2/3 majority rule. The court held an inauguration ceremony for the 2 new justices, Cho Han-chang and Chung Kye-sun, on Thursday. Beginning his tenure, Justice Cho vowed to always reflect on what it means to ensure the dignity and value of humanity, and how the protection of basic rights through the rule of law should be realized in defending liberal democratic order. Justice Chung says she will strive to be a reliable member of the court that earns the trust of the people. Their 6-year terms will end on the last day of December 2030. Now, with one judicial vacancy, the court said Thursday that it continues to call for a swift appointment to complete its panel. Acting President Choi Sang-mok has said he will fill the remaining seat after bipartisan agreement is reached in Parliament. Also, with investigative authorities closing in to detain Yoon for questioning on insurrection charges, the Constitutional Court says it will conduct a procedural review of the case, including the President's request for the court's adjudication and an injunction to challenge the arrest warrant. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Turning to the latest on Sunday's tragic plane crash. Authorities have officially launched an investigation into the accident at Busan International Airport, with a search and seizure warrant in execution starting today. Kim Do-yeon has more.
Police on Thursday morning executed a search and seizure warrant for their investigation into the Jeju Airline crash. 3 locations are listed on the warrant: offices at Muan International Airport, the Muan branch office of the Busan Regional Office of Aviation, and the Seoul office of Jeju Air. The charge indicated on the warrant is death and injury by occupational negligence, but a specific alleged suspect is yet to be named. Until now, police invested time in identifying the remains of the victims, but all 179 have now been identified. Now the investigation team is steering towards finding the reasons behind the tragedy, including aircraft operations and maintenance. At the same time, the government's Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board and experts from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board and Boeing have opened an office at Muan International Airport to investigate the crash as well. According to the Transportation Ministry, the conversion of recorded data from the aircraft's cockpit voice recorder into audio format has been finished, which is earlier than expected, and the data will be transferred to the U.S. to be looked at. The ministry assured that investigation results will be transparent.
Additionally, there are concerns that the investigation might yield biased results since it is being conducted in the United States. However, as I mentioned yesterday, investigators from South Korea's Accident Investigation Committee will be participating in the investigation as well.
Earlier in the day, Acting President and Deputy Prime Minister Choi Sang-mok also addressed the crash issues. Apart from further safety checks across the nation for aircraft and airport operations, he addressed concerns over protecting the victims and their families.
According to media reports, indiscriminate posts, malicious comments, false and manipulated information, and provocative videos about the victims and their families are being shared on social media. We earnestly ask everyone to refrain from actions that cause pain to the bereaved families and other well-meaning individuals involved.
He called on law enforcement authorities to monitor the situation and that there will be legal repercussions for those who commit such malicious actions. As for honoring the victims, the first burial of a victim was held early Thursday morning, with more victims leaving for their resting places throughout the day. So far, a total of 30 of the victims have been transferred to their families. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
With the start of 2025, the government today announced its new economic policy plans. A key focus is on stabilizing the economy amid both external and internal uncertainties. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin joins us here. Soo-jin, what does the government think the economy will look like this year?
Right, so as we saw earlier, South Korea is currently going through a turbulent period with the ongoing impeachment trial of President Yoon, as well as none other than Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok being appointed as acting president. And this week is also a national mourning period for the Jeju airplane crash. The crash, which happened on Sunday morning, is also why the release of economic policy plans for this year, originally scheduled for Monday, was pushed back to today. This is why it comes as no surprise that the government is anticipating that people's livelihoods will continue to face difficulties as downside risks to the economy grow due to both external and domestic uncertainties. External risks that the government is monitoring include the implementation of tariffs that may target South Korea's exports with the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump, as tariffs from his previous administration imposed financial pressure on key industries. And as shifts in trade policies are expected, the government is also aware that this will also have a broader impact on supply chains. While domestic demand, which the state-run Korea Development Bank think tank has assessed as weak for more than a year now, is expected to see some improvement, export growth is expected to slow. And people are expected to continue feeling that the economy is sluggish due to the ongoing political turmoil, despite the downward trend in consumer prices. With this assessment, the government is projecting the economy to grow only 1.8% in 2025 compared to 2.1% growth in 2024.
Will the new economic policy plans mitigate these concerns?
So just like you mentioned earlier, the overarching theme for this year's economic policy plans is to ensure that the economy remains stable despite the external and internal factors. So the policies are focused on 4 key areas: revitalizing people's livelihoods, managing external credibility, responding to trade uncertainties, and strengthening industrial competitiveness. Here's what Acting President and Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok had to say earlier today.
The growth rate is expected to decline to around 1.8%, exacerbating challenges for livelihoods and raising concerns about external creditworthiness. As such, the government has drafted the 2025 economic policy plan with the goal of stabilizing the economy.
To improve livelihoods, the government will allocate 70% of 85 trillion won, or nearly $60 billion and the largest ever, to be allocated in the first half of the year to fund various projects that include helping young adults who are seeking employment, lowering grocery prices, and supporting small business owners. Nearly $8 billion will be spent on lowering livelihood costs by providing discounts for agricultural and livestock products and energy vouchers. The government is also focusing on maintaining external credibility by providing more than $130 million in cash subsidies in the first half of the year to encourage foreign investment. The acting president also said the government will continue to work towards making sure that Korea's WGBI inclusion and the corporate value program are carried out without setbacks.
And what are plans for trade and industries?
Right, so as we talked about before, the external factors are imposing as much significant challenge to the nation's economy as internal factors. With one of them being the incoming Trump administration, the government is planning to hold meetings with both the economic and foreign affairs ministers. And as there is concerns about a slowdown in exports, nearly $2 billion will be allocated to support them. Corporate tax and value-added tax benefits will also be provided for export-oriented SMEs. In order to maintain industrial competitiveness amid various external uncertainties, the government will support the enactment of the Special Semiconductor Act, which seeks to strengthen global competitiveness by exempting R&D employees from the 52-hour workweek restriction and allowing direct government subsidies for chip companies during the initial investment stages. As part of efforts to become one of the top 3 leading countries in the AI industry, the government plans to set up a national AI computing center and release an outline for developing and attracting AI talent in the first half of the year.
All right, we will keep a close eye on those policies. Thanks for the report.
Thank you for having me.
Israeli airstrikes killed at least 20 Palestinians throughout the Gaza Strip early on New Year's Day. Meantime, hypothermia and winter rainstorms are worsening the situation in Gaza. Cha Yoon-kyung has the latest.
More than 20 Palestinians, including women and children, were killed throughout Gaza on New Year's Day. One strike hit a home in the Jabalia area of northern Gaza, where Israel has been waging a major operation since early October, killing 15 according to Gaza's civil defense agency. A local resident said that a wall of his neighborhood collapsed onto his house due to the early morning attack. Israeli troops also attacked southern Gaza's Khan Yunis, killing at least 3 people. Israel said the airstrike was aimed at preventing the regrouping of Hamas. However, there has been continuous damage to civilian institutions such as hospitals. At the end of last year, the Israeli army was highly criticized for raiding Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza and arresting around 240 hospital staff.
These atrocities need to end. Around me is nothing but rubble and destruction.
According to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, another strike overnight on the Bureau's refugee camp in central Gaza killed a woman and a child. Hundreds of people who live in tents are defenseless as winter brings frequent rainstorms and the temperature drops at night. At least 7 children have died of hypothermia over the week, according to the health ministry run by Hamas. A spokesman for the Palestinian civil defense in Gaza, Mahmoud Bassar, said the world is celebrating New Year while residents in Palestine suffer from the pain of war. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
In other news, the U.S. is reeling in the aftermath of an appalling attack in the city of New Orleans that has killed 15 people and injured dozens of others, just 3 hours after the country ushered in the new year. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
Bourbon Street, located at the heart of the French Quarters in New Orleans, was particularly crowded due to New Year's celebrations and college football's Sugar Bowl between the University of Notre Dame and the University of Georgia, set to take place later Wednesday evening. However, the scene quickly turned into chaos when a driver drove a truck up the street, crashing into pedestrians, killing at least 15 people and leaving dozens more injured. The suspect, who was shot by police officers, was found to have an ISIS flag in the vehicle at the time of the attack. Calling it an act of terrorism, the FBI says it's investigating potential links with terrorist organizations. The FBI also said the driver may not have been solely responsible for the attack, as improvised explosive devices were found in the vehicle as well. IEDs were also discovered on Bourbon Street with video footage showing 3 men and a woman who may have been involved in placing the devices. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump took to his social media platform Truth Social on Wednesday to blame illegal immigrants for the attack before the suspect was identified by authorities as 42-year-old Shamsud Din-Jabbar, an Army veteran and U.S. citizen from Texas. The annual football game was postponed for safety reasons. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It was not severely cold this morning in Seoul at minus 2.8 degrees Celsius. However, the capital is expected to drop to minus 5 degrees tomorrow morning. With the cold winds moving south, the temperatures will plummet across the country tomorrow. Meanwhile, East Coast areas are under dry weather warnings since the atmosphere in the Seoul metropolitan area and the Gyeongsang-do provinces is drying up as well. Please be careful of wildfires. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at minus 10 degrees, Daegu minus 3 degrees. Highs will move up to 2 degrees in Seoul, Daejeon, Gwangju, and Gyeongju 4 degrees. Rain or snow is forecast in the central parts of the country from early morning on Sunday. The amount of snowfall can be a lot this time, so please be prepared. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. We wish you a Happy New Year.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room. Obviously, you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
이유 없이 다 줄 수 있을까? 내가 날 속이는 건 아닐까? 가시가 오늘도 자라난다. 그걸 안아줄 사람 있을까?
껴안고 웃어줘 아무런 말도
진짜 한국에선 어떻게 먹는지 알려줄까?
K-바비큐? 신김치랑 먹어야지.
치킨? 치맥 페스티벌은 처음이지?
김치? 종류만큼 먹는 법도 가지각색.
김밥? 시장에선, 산에선, 바다에선 이렇게.
국밥? 취향 따라, 입맛 따라.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸? 요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도, 인생 번호를 찾을 수도 있지. 제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기. 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring you today's most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. As the global economy continues to grapple with uncertainty, South Korea announced its updated economic policy direction for 2025, signaling major shifts in fiscal strategies. Notably, the government has revised its growth forecast for this year from 2.2% to 1.8%, a figure that trails behind projections by international organizations. This revised outlook reflects the complex challenges the country faces, including slower than expected domestic recovery, a delicate export environment, and shifting geopolitical dynamics. To tackle these challenges, the government has unveiled a broad range of policy measures, including a $12.3 billion economic stimulus package. But with such a comprehensive strategy, one question remains. Will these measures be enough to navigate the turbulence ahead? Today, we unpack the significance of these announcements and pinpoint some relevant economic policies that will take effect from this year. For this, we invite Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Welcome, Professor.
Hello.
And also joining us is Song Soo-young, Professor of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Great to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
So let's start with Professor Song. The government has revised its growth forecast for this year from 2.2 to 1.8, like I said, which is lower than projections of the OECD, IMF, and the Bank of Korea. What do you think is driving this revision, and how should we interpret the implications of these changes in policy direction?
Yeah, certainly this revision clearly reflects the recent incident that happened in the December 3rd when the martial law has been announced. And even though it has been short-lived, but still we are in some situation that has been like the waging the conflict between the opposition party and the incumbent President Yoon Suk-yeol. So clearly, this is we cannot deny the effect of this one. But clearly, according to the most of the projections made by OECD or IMF or even the Bank of Korea, they have made even before December 3rd. So that already reflected the lowering fertility rate and the aging population. That is clearly the obstacles that make the Korean economy grow sluggishly, and we expect a very low growth rate up for the upcoming years and for this year also in 2024. The problem is, unless we make this happening as a short-lived and a temporary one, this could settle down as a very permanent effect as a Korea discount. So that is what I'm most concerned. And the revision that was made by the Minister of the Economic Planning, that has reflected this situation. And also this could make people's and the consumption behavior very conservatively. I mean, they do not spend money. So they are more likely to fall into some liquidity trap. So that makes matters worse. So today's announcement and today's declaration of the economic policy directions that could alleviate the negative effect of the most upcoming happenings, and also recover the consumer confidence, and also make the foreign investors to remain within the Korean market. So that is reflected well, and we are going to see that in details. But primarily, I think this policy is necessary and well aligned with the current situation.
Right, and the government has also announced plans to inject $245 billion this year into trade industry and revealed tailored support plans for key industries such as semiconductors and also shipbuilding. Professor Yang, do you think this will have a positive impact on the slowdown in exports?
Well, I think it will have a positive effect, but not a very large one. And that's basically because no matter what we do in Korea, we cannot really affect the decisions for demand that takes place outside Korea, which is what export is. Now, policies may help firms get some financing if they run out of liquidity. They may ease some export procedures, which is what we should do anyway. But the plans that were announced today dealt with things like making more industries, assisting more industries to export, giving some extra subsidies to certain strategic industries and so on. But still, that does not fundamentally deal with increasing demand abroad. And also, some of the measures, I'm not sure if it'll be short-term enough to help this year. For example, trying to widen the range of products that Korea exports, that is very good as a policy goal. We should have done it anyway. But the market for Korean exports globally will probably be lower this year, partially because of the Trump effect, partially because of the global economic slowdown that we will still see. So yes, we should be doing some of these policies anyway, and it will be helpful somewhat, but I don't see it as being that big a help. I think we should concentrate more on recovering the domestic economy rather than trying to use exports as an engine of growth, at least for this year.
Right, so focusing more on the core domestic economy is important. Now, South Korea's government has also identified livelihood issues as a top priority. And to restore livelihoods, it introduced a $12.26 billion economic stimulus package and announced plans for various support projects as well. Professor Song, could you highlight for us the key details of this plan?
Yeah, this plan has been well illustrated in some economic policy directions. As I agree with Professor Yang's position, the domestic economy is much more important to recover, to regroup and recover the Korean economy in the right track to have some strong domestic consumption and demand, because the outside export part is very vulnerable and it's totally up to the U.S.'s President Trump's mind. So in detail, the livelihood, because livelihood to make the economic policy directions is it comes as the first one, and all our effort to achieve a swift recovery of people's consumption. And particularly, they would like to reduce the specific consumption taxation and offering some subsidy for the purchase of the electric vehicle. Also, because the electric vehicle usually produced to export to United States market, but that might face some obstacles and barriers. Therefore, this is a very well-aligned policy, and also to make people assured of the income or the consumption purchasing power could be reliable, then the government and as well as the Bank of Korea should emphasize, they should put much more emphasis on to make people believe that the current situation will not continue. So that means not only support the livelihood of the vulnerables and the lower income groups, and also support provide the subsidies to some export and the small and medium enterprises. And also, what is important is lowering interest rate is also very important, because otherwise, so-called there is a caballo effect, which tells us that there's some stagflationary effect of the high interest rate, because of it could affect the working capital, which turns out to be a cost to the small and medium enterprise. So to that regard, what is necessary to assure people this current situation, economic turmoil, turbulence is a very temporary one, and then the Korean economy will return to the right track for the future. Then, in order to assure people, convince people of the future prospect of the economy, should be the fiscal expansionary policy should be accompanied by the monetary easing policy also.
Right. And with this unstable trade environment and the political impeachment crisis coinciding, the government has also identified the management of international credibility as an urgent priority. Professor Yang, what measures has the government proposed to manage its international credibility, and how effective do you think these measures will be?
Okay, well, in the economic plans, they did announce some plans to subsidize or give support to certain strategic industries, and for recovery of or maintenance of current sovereign credit rating. They are going to push up the economic diplomacy of efforts. It's necessary. It's necessary, but I'm not sure how effective they will be, especially for the sovereign credit rating. And that's because if you look at the sovereign credit rating, what that does, what that's supposed to evaluate is whether the government can pay back the debt that it has incurred, and whether they can pay back the interest on that debt on time. And I would say that the damage from the martial law was less than the damage from the current political turmoil. If you talk about martial law, nothing in the real economy was really that much affected. Production, exports, they were not affected. People were not arrested, or people were not hurt. So we could have survived the martial law with basically a hiccup in the economy, but we've seen the political turmoil expanding, and it's threatening to paralyze the workings of the government. If we look at, say, 2003, when Fitch downgraded U.S. credit rating, that was because of the internal political conflict in the U.S. Congress, where the Congress refused to raise the U.S. credit ceiling for borrowing, and that created concerns that the U.S. will not pay back its debt because the government will be paralyzed. And a couple of weeks ago, when S&P downgraded French sovereign credit rating, it was because the French government, the prime minister, did not survive the no confidence vote. So again, they were afraid that the government will be paralyzed. So the best thing that we can do right now, it's not a sufficient condition, but it is a necessary condition, is that the political turmoil be reduced as much as possible. But the politicians do not seem to be listening.
Well, let's hope that would be resolved as soon as possible for the economy, of course. Now, let's circle back to interest rates again. Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong has released a message regarding 2025 monetary policy direction, and he mentioned that the pace of interest rate cuts would be determined flexibly this year. Professor Song, how do you expect the base interest rate to be decided at the upcoming Monetary Policy Committee meeting in 2 weeks?
Today's expression about some interest rate policy were made by the chairman Lee Chang-yong. But he used the expression of the flexibility and agility. So that is a little bit nuanced. I mean that clearly in the past 2 consecutive interest rate reduction may not be enough, but today's the announcement of the economic policy offered by the Minister of Economics Planning and Finance has been seems a little bit too strong. That's why the chairman of the Bank of Korea took the position which would be a little bit alleviate the effect of the interest rate reduction. But however, even with that, clearly I would like to mention the sentiment. Professor Yang has mentioned that the political turmoil should be some hiccup, and they are not supposed to affect export manufacturing. But however, the sentiment is what I would like to mention is very important to prevail the consumers' behavior for the upcoming years. And then what matters is to make that not to be settled in the people's mind. That is important. So in the December 2024, actually the composite business sentiment index has been dropped to 87. This is one of the lowest among the more than decades. And the 88.4 points, the composite consumer sentiment and the economic sentiment index has been dropped to 83.1. In addition to these declining sentiment, consumer sentiment, the producers manufacturing index, PMI, producers management index, and that has been dropped to less than 50. And that is really bad. Even though we barely avoid the technical recession, because in the last quarter, we barely increased the growth rate by 0.1%. But I think the current situation is equivalent to some recession situation. As a result, in order to recover the sentiment to some positively and prevent the sentiment from dropping further, then we are going to fall into definitely the recession, and psychologically. So in order to avoid that, what we need right now is much stronger, or the lowering interest rate, such as Jerome Powell even lower the interest rate from the 3 or 4% to 0% in the face of the coronavirus and Ukraine and the Russian war. So similar step is necessary to convince people and do not make people feel afraid of the upcoming economy at all.
So further adjustments would be necessary. Mm-hmm. Now, let's shift our discussions to economic policies that will be changing from this year onward. Now, one of the most eye-catching change will be the minimum wage increase by 1.7% to 10,031 per hour. Professor Young, what is the significance of the minimum wage surpassing $10,000 mark? And what do you think about some criticisms that this is the second lowest increase ever and that it falls short of the 2.6% inflation forecast?
Okay, well, I think we do need to maybe not lower the minimum wage, but we do need to limit the increase because it has risen so much in the last 10 years. If you look at the minimum wage over the last 10 years, that's more than doubled. And I think that is showing up on the employment reports. Last year, the employment reports seemed very good with the headline figures, but if you look behind the numbers, the number of full-time jobs were reduced, and most of the job growth took place with part-time jobs, less than 36 hours per week, and most of it came in the form of social welfare work, which is mostly government financed. Now, Korean minimum wage as a percentage of per capita GDP is on the higher side of OECD countries. We are ranked 7th, but most of the countries that are ahead of Korea is Eastern European countries, and I think they set their minimum wage by the assumption that minimum wage workers do not work full-time jobs, but in Korea, minimum wage often sets the pace for full-time work. So during perhaps not this year, but during the last 10 years or so, the minimum wage has gone up very quickly, leading not only to the increases in minimum wage itself, but also wages overall. That's partially why I think young people are finding so difficulties in finding jobs when they graduate. And I think a slower pace for increase in minimum wage is warranted at this time.
Right. So about the criticisms that it's too small, the increase is too small, you're thinking that it's appropriate.
Yes. Now, 2024 official of inflation rate was 2.4%, I think, and the minimum wage right now is going up by 1.7%. So it is losing some of its purchasing power. But still, if you count things like allowances and benefits, then I think the current minimum wage as a percentage of GDP should be adjusted somewhat. I think this right now the Korean, if you work a full-time job at a minimum wage, you're earning about 66% of per capita GDP, and I think that is creating a lot of burden for a lot of small businesses. And if you look at the employment data for small businesses, a lot of people are willing to work for less than that. They are already getting less than that amount just so that they could work and get some form of income.
All right, thank you for further explaining on that. What about Professor Song? Do you also think these kinds of concerns on employment and consumer prices would materialize? And what kind of measures do you think are necessary to mitigate these effects?
This is the point where I have quite different contrasting opinion about the minimum wage issues. Particularly, minimum wage is not for the full-time worker. I agree with Professor Yang's opinion about that. But however, what matters most in the minimum wage, the real wage is actually declining. And also, if we isolate the minimum wage as a separate issue, independent of all the other issues, then the Professor Yang's argument could be maybe right. But however, we should not do such a thing to isolate the minimum wage issue separately, independent of all other things. So considering the current economic situation, is the small and medium enterprise has been shut down, and their performance is getting worse, not because of the minimum wage, but because of the policy and the economic situation in Korea now they have went through. So considering that the minimum wage, at least as long as the small and medium enterprise, they could would like to hire some people and offering such the decent wage, that is very important for the labor workers, temporary job, part-time job workers to have some meaningful and decent income for maintaining their purchasing power. So this is also for the purpose of the stabilization of economy for some lower income people. That is very important. And also this could be very beneficial to some medium and rich persons, rich companies, because they would like to spend more money. So unless they are fall into liquidity trap, then the height increase of the minimum wage could be positive to the economic recovery.
All right. It's always good to hear both sides of your opinion. It has been a very fruitful discussion today. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it today right here. Many thanks for your insights, Professor Yang and Professor Song. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
요즘 한국에선 어떻게 노는지 알려줄까?
한국에선 아이돌이 되어볼 수도 인생 언어를 찾을 수도 있지.
제일 핫한 포토 스팟은 여기.
모험이 시작돼. 끝없는 여정 두근두근 내 심장.